Hello everyone, Happy New Year 2023. So this year my goals are to finish up my research. So I have some experiments to conduct and I plan on graduating by next year, May latest. I am behind, but my PhD journey was a little different. I joined my lab a little late in the fall semester. I started up some research which got scrapped. I also did a PhD co-op at Merck for 6 months. So I'm in my 5th year, but I'm still pushing through to graduate soon, but not on time. I do have good news though. I made a goal last year, 2022, to publish or actually submit at least my first author manuscript to a journal before Christmas as a Christmas gift to myself. I honestly didn't think it was going to happen. I doubted myself. I think my co-authors also doubted that it would be submitted before Christmas. I was okay settling for it being submitted in early 2023. However, it was submitted on December 21st of last year, and I was just so relieved and happy to get it out of the way. This isn't the end, it isn't published, but if you're familiar, essentially you submit your finalized draft and then they will get back to you with any peer review revisions that they expect you to make if they do want to accept your manuscript into their journal. Or they could actually just reject your paper altogether and you'll have to try to submit it to another journal. So right now I've submitted to a journal and I've also posted the preprint of the paper on bioRxiv, and I'll post the link in the description of this video. You can take a look at what I've been doing, the work I've been churning away at, and the results that we have come up with after a couple years of research. Today, I want to talk about how to get out that first author publication or manuscript to a journal. When it comes to the days in and days out of research and academia, there's no like strict timeline, right? Some people take 3 years, 4 years to complete their PhD, some 5, 6, 7, 8 years sometimes, because if you're familiar with science and research, we know that things do not always go according to the plan you make up in your brain, right? This is the real world out there. You plan an experiment, you do it for 3 months, and then you realize, oh shoot, the data doesn't really make sense, or the story that you thought was going to unfold didn't unfold the way you like to, so you have to, scrap and go back to the drawing board. So that is like what research is. It sounds painful, but if you love that, it's fun. I thought when you're put on a project by your PI, you conduct some research, and when they find that the results are sound enough, they tell you, hey, I think you should publish a paper on this. So that's what I've been doing. I've been doing research, presenting it to my collaborators, my PI, and, just chugging along. And then I went to this conference held by the Southern Regional Educational Board on teaching and mentoring, and this was through my Sloan fellowship. And what I learned there is that, hey, you as the student, the PhD student, you need to be pushing your advisor and saying, hey, I want to publish this work. So I was like, what? How do I know when my work is ready to be published? I'm the novice here in a sense compared to my PI. So after the conference, I went back and I, gave a presentation to my lab members, and my PI agreed. She said, yeah, y'all should be pushing to publish your work. So I was like, okay, now I need to get on the board and start pushing my PI to publish the paper that we're going to write. So that's the first step I wanted to bring light to, is that don't wait for your PI to tell you when your results are ready. You build your research, present your results, and propose, hey, this is what I want to submit to a journal, and know which journal you want to submit to as well. So I think a good plan is to come up with a 1 to 2 page proposal, or like a fantasy paper, right? You present this proposal or story with your results that you found to your PI or collaborators or co-authors. And once they're on board, that gives you the go-ahead to start up an initial draft. They're not going to start a draft for you. You need to start your draft. Right? So use a nice software that allows you to save multiple iterations, like online, like on a cloud, I use OneDrive, Emory University's OneDrive. So there's a lot of storage space. My advisor has access, and all my collaborators have access to that OneDrive folder. And that's where I started doing multiple drafts of the paper so that we can save the old versions of the paper and update as we go along. Make that first initial draft. So you're going to start with a blank Microsoft Word document online. You will section out the headings as the journal specifies. So in my case, there's a cover letter, then there's your abstract, your introduction, your results, discussion, conclusion, references, supplemental figures, acknowledgements, etc. So once you have that draft, that's like a good first step because it shows you that, hey, I'm making a start at this manuscript. Your first draft won't be blank because remember, you've been doing the research and the analysis for a while, so you would at least have some figures to put in the results section. So what you want to do is come up with those draft figures that you want to include in that manuscript and put them in the results section. So you'll have figure 1, this, figure 2, that, a small caption explaining what each is, and you just have them there because this is going to be the meat of your story. Even though, research is a long process to come to some great result, another difficult part of the process is to do a literature review. So for me, this was the hardest part because it meant I needed to read a lot of papers very quickly so that I can come up with a good sound introduction and discussion, because you always have to relate your work to what's already been done in the field or what's currently being done to show how you are actually adding to the field of science or engineering or, changing the field in some way to give a little perspective to your readers. Doing a deep dive into the literature is mandatory, right? This was difficult for me because I felt like I kept focusing on results and, different analyses to get my figures together, so I didn't have much time to do the reading necessary. But a good way to find a lot of articles in your field is to maybe go on PubMed, type in some keywords related to your research, and printing out the abstracts for all of those articles that seemed very related to your work. And once you've printed them out, you can read them and decide, okay, which ones make sense to include in my research. The abstract alone should give you that amount of information. And once you've picked out those relevant articles, you want to now store those relevant articles in a citation manager. So I use Zotero to organize my articles and references so that when it's time to add those references into your manuscript, it's very easy. You just link the Microsoft Word to your citation manager, and in sentences, you can just easily add your references from your citation manager into your Word, and it automatically populates a bibliography at the end. So you don't need to go copy and paste in references and developing your bibliographies yourself. Essentially, you just save all your articles very organized in folders in your citation manager, and this saves you a lot of time, energy, and effort. Your advisor should also be a good resource in terms of finding seminal papers related to your work or even interesting papers. You can also ask them, hey, I need some articles related to XYZ. Do you have any in mind? And most likely they do, because they have a lot of peers, co-workers, etc. in the field who they'll be getting notifications about their recent work from their students, and they'll be able to easily share it with you, hopefully. So that's literature review, right? You want to have all of these articles well organized in your citation manager so that you can easily access them for when writing up your introduction, discussion, and other areas of your manuscript. Something I wish I did very early on was managing my code a little better. I had my code structured in a way that I know how to use. I need to change X, Y, Z if I want to do this, this, this. And if I were to just hand it over to another student, they'll be very confused, right? Yes, I had it commented. It was readable to some extent, but it wasn't fully understandable if someone was to just say, oh, what does this part of the code do? What was that part do? So my advice is to really comment your code, your data analysis code, etc., so that when it's time to share that code as a supplement with your manuscript, if your journal allows that, you're not like trying to do this whole thing for months to get it into a proper shape. So have your code well commented, understandable, readable. Maybe ask another student in the lab to test your code, just run it and see if they could populate your results figures. And have a README document to show how to step through the code to produce the results that you get. And this will save you a lot of time when you're actually in the heat of things writing up that manuscript, because you already have your code well organized while you were actually making the code. Another thing that's really frustrating is when your advisor or your collaborators or co-authors, they may have a lot of changes they may want to make to your figures and results. So everything in essence should be automated, right? You don't want to have to be changing things manually, because when they say, okay, well, actually change figure 1, do this, and then you're like, oh shoot, I spent like an hour doing these things manually and getting it into this way, that looks good for the figure. So now I have to do it over. And I fell into this trap too many times, right? But if I had written code that automated the process for me, whenever they say, hey, make this change, all I need to do is make that one change, and then voila, it falls into place automatically, right? So don't make that promise. You don't want to keep doing that while you're writing your paper, because your advisors don't know how long things take on your end. And as a PhD student, you want to make sure things are done as correctly and automatically as possible. That being said, when developing your figures and even your first draft with all the headings and subheadings, etc., make sure it's in the format that the journal specifies. So make sure and read that document that they specify. Hey, you need to have your fonts in Times New Roman or Arial, font 11 or 12. You bold these subheadings, etc., right? You don't want to have to make stupid changes coming down to the end when your advisor says, hey, this font size is off. And then you have to go reformat the whole document. Make sure it's great from the start. So once you have that nice initial draft all formatted as your target journal specifies, you have your results figures, you've started your literature review, you've maybe started, writing the discussion section or the introduction. Now, an important part of this process is getting feedback from your co-authors. And most of us know it's sometimes very difficult to get that time that you require with your advisor to get this paper submitted. So something I had to do was to set up one-on-one meetings weekly with my advisor, and I tried to get 1 to 2 hour chunks. Normally my advisor gives us 45 minutes each, but I started saying, hey, I really want to get this published. Started putting 2 hour blocks on her calendar. I'm not sure if your advisor would have that much time on their calendar, but try to get as much one-on-one writing time with your advisor and or your co-authors so that you can really push this manuscript along. Because while yes, you can have your initial draft, figures, etc., they do need to review each section of the manuscript, and the earlier and the more often that you guys get together and get this reviewed, the faster your manuscript can be submitted and eventually published. Something I didn't do, but now I wish I did, was to have these meetings and maybe walk with some coffee or donut to make the meetings a little more enjoyable. I mean, it wasn't a problem, but it's nice if you say, hey everyone, can we meet for like 2 hours on Tuesday? Everyone who's on the paper, of course, and you have some donuts and coffee waiting, and I think they'll really appreciate it. Another thing that I did that worked well was print out the draft that you currently have for the meeting and have some pens, highlighters maybe, so that when they come to the meeting, they're not like looking for a pen or, trying to find an article online, like they already have it there and they could just start reviewing and giving you that feedback. Now, a very important part for getting this manuscript submitted in the time frame that you would like is to start giving deadlines to your co-authors. One of my co-authors, every time I say, hey, can you review the intro? She said, when do you need that by? And I'll be like, a week, 2 weeks. Whenever I did that, the chances of that getting done was negative because they're like, okay, well, it seems like she doesn't need it anytime soon. And I have tons of other things I can do to fill my time. These people are very busy. So if you want feedback next week, Friday, you have to say, hey, Friday the 14th, whatever, I need the discussion reviewed, please. Thank you. Right? That way they know, okay, I need to put this person, I need to put this student on my schedule to have this done by Friday. Or they might tell you, hey, I'm really busy for the next 2 to 3 weeks. I wouldn't be able to get this to you until the end of the month. Right? And you say, okay, so XY date at the end of the month, will that be good? And you make sure and put something on the calendar to make sure that you're following up with your co-authors on, their progress at reviewing the different sections of the manuscript. It is annoying. You might feel like you're harassing them, etc. But this is the process and this is your project. So you need to be very proactive and keep harassing them, whatever you need to do to get your things reviewed. So when I made that joke about, hey, I want to submit before Christmas to one of my collaborators, they took me seriously. Like I just put it out there, hey, Christmas gift to myself. But every meeting he said, oh, well, we'll see if we could get it done by Christmas. Okay, we'll do this by Christmas. Oh, I could see it coming along by Christmas. And I'm like, that was a good goal to set because getting it out before Christmas was just like a huge relief because that means I'm starting the new year, transitioning into the second phase of my project. And by the time I get back the feedback from the journal that we submitted to, I would then have to do the revisions, etc. But at least it's kind of like ushering me into like new things this year. Another thing you need to really be mindful of is be patient with yourself, right? A PhD is no easy feat. I don't know if you think it is in your brain. If it is for you, then great, but it's difficult, right? These things take time, years. Why do you think people don't just get a PhD in 6 months? Because research takes time, building up yourself takes time, doing the research, the experimentation, the reading, the literature reviews, all of this takes time. So be patient with yourself. Not everybody is on the same timeline, right? Some people could publish out 3 papers in 1 year. That may not be you. You may be working on a bigger paper. You may be working on a more in-depth experiment where you can't churn out results that quickly. So do not compare yourself to others and be patient with your own process. Once you have your paper submitted, post it on bioRxiv or whichever archive online, now you have to wait. Not waiting, twiddling your thumbs. You could do other things for your research, other papers you could start working on, but now you wait on the publisher's feedback. So a certain number of individuals are going to review your paper. They will have comments. They may say, hey, you need to address this before you could actually be accepted. Or, hey, I really don't like this paper. It has fundamental flaws. I don't think this belongs in a journal. So you could be rejected, but that's okay. You just need to take things in stride and expect that, hey, I submitted it, but this does not mean that it's going to be published, right? You're going to have feedback, you're going to have criticisms, and you might want to prepare for reviewer number 2. And if you don't know, reviewer number 2 is that person who gives harsh, critical feedback that just could have you slumped, right? If you've written a grant before and you've gotten like great feedback from reviewer 1, our next feedback was great, but then this one reviewer just seemed to be attacking your work, that's reviewer 2, right? So you got to be prepared. Yes, you did amazing work, you submitted it, but be prepared for that feedback. Be prepared to be doing a lot of revisions. Someone will always find something for you to improve on, and that's okay. That's human nature. No one is perfect. No one's work is perfect. Don't be jarred when you get back those reviews after you've submitted your paper. And I'll let you know the kind of reviews I get back on this one. Please put in the comments if you have any wonderful tips you'd like to share with upcoming PhD students, candidates, on how to prepare your first author manuscript or any publication for that matter. Post your first author manuscript in the chat below. Let's take a read of your work. Happy writing, everyone.
Bye.